recognize the distinguished ranking member for questions he might.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, I've heard some of my colleagues say that this is not about banning books, but give me a break. Look what's happening in this country. Republican-led legislatures are going on a censorship spree that would make the Chinese Communist Party blush. We have 25 states that have passed laws telling students what they are and aren't allowed to learn about in school. We have Republican leaders calling to investigate librarians. We now have 1,500 banned books in schools across the country. We have teachers in Iowa being told they can't teach that slavery was wrong. We have teachers in Texas being told that if they have a book on the Holocaust, you have to have a book that teaches, and I quote, the opposite perspective. We have Republicans in Tennessee trying to ban a Pulitzer Prize-winning book about the Holocaust. We have Republicans in Wisconsin trying to ban an award-winning book because it mentions Japanese internment during World War II. If this were happening in another country, our State Department would be sounding the alarm, but it is happening here. And against that backdrop, here we have a bill that makes it easier to censor ideas and ban books. That makes it easier for one racist or homophobic person to dictate to an entire class, an entire school, what kids can and can't read. That creates onerous steps to make schools justify which books are on the shelves if a single parent complains. That is not how freedom works. A free society isn't afraid of ideas. To my colleagues who claim to be libertarians, can you seriously vote for this bill and claim to care about freedom when you're voting to restrict what books are on the shelves? Even the Cato Institute says this bill is unconstitutional. That should tell you something. So let me just make this really concrete for people. I have a pile of books on my desk in my office that I get from the Library of Congress, books that have been banned. And I have more coming every day. Luckily, my Republican friends haven't censored the Library of Congress yet. Maybe that will be next. But let me just read from one of these books. It's called The Life of Rosa Parks by Kathleen Connors. It was pulled from second-grade classrooms in the Duval County Public School District in Florida. So let's just see what is so objectionable. Quiet beginnings. When Rosa Louise McCauley was born in 1913, no one knew she'd make a stand for civil rights. Rosa lived on her grandparents' farm in Alabama. She went to a segregated school where her mother taught. Rosa had to leave school to care for her grandmother and mother when they became ill. But after she married Raymond Parks in 1932, she was able to go back, and Rosa was proud of her high school diploma. Rosa and Raymond believed everyone should be equal. They joined the NAACP in Montgomery, Alabama, hoping to help blacks gain their civil rights. Rosa worked as a secretary for the group. In 1955, Rosa boarded a bus after work in Montgomery. At the time, there was a law that said a black person had to give up their seat if a white person needed it. Rosa refused, and she was arrested. On the day of Rosa's trial, black leaders planned a boycott of all the city buses in Montgomery, Alabama. It was a big statement because many blacks use buses to get around. Rosa was fined, but she wouldn't pay. By 1956, her case had reached the U.S. Supreme Court. It declared Alabama's segregation laws illegal. This decision ended the bus boycott after 381 days. Rosa's troubles weren't over. She lost her job. Some people said they wanted to hurt her. She and her family then moved to Detroit, Michigan in 1957. None of this stopped Rosa from believing in equality. Rosa's continued support of the civil rights movement earned her great praise. In 1996, she was given the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Then Rosa received the Congressional Gold Medal in 1999. Rosa died in 2005. Today, she's often called the mother of the civil rights movement. Rosa's story teaches a very important lesson. Even small actions can have a big impact. So my question for Chairwoman Fox, it's very simple. It's a yes or no question. You know, Rosa Parks has a statue in National Statuary Hall. She laid in honor here in the rotunda of the United States Capitol building when she died. And so this is a simple, non-controversial children's book about her life. Do you think that this book should be banned? Yes or no?
I have no idea why the book was of controversy in the second grade. It sounds like a perfectly wonderful story to me. I love the story of Rosa Parks, always have loved the story of Rosa Parks because she was a really brave woman, but I have no idea. You're asking me to give you an answer out of context, Mr. McGovern. I have no idea why that book was taken out of the second grade. I don't know reading levels.
Well,
it sounded a little high.
I read the whole
reading level for second grade to me. As you read it, that was. Yeah. I thought second graders might not understand every word in there, so I have no idea.
Well, I read the whole book.
I know.
So there was, and I think the concern that many of us have, given what is happening in this country, led by Republican governors and Republican legislatures all over the country, is that somebody just merely raising a question about a book like this. I mean, by the way, books about Martin Luther King, books about Nelson Mandela, they've also been banned. I have a long list that I'd like unanimous consent to insert in the record, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection.
And, and some of the commentary is that some people who object to this don't like the fact that she is referred to as a black woman, that it would be better to simply say she was asked to move to the back of the bus. And so there's all these kind of like ridiculous excuses for books like this to be banned. And the concern is that if this bill passes, and God forbid it ever became law, that it would have a chilling impact on schools and on libraries where they would be afraid that if they didn't comply with all the onerous requirements of your bill, if somehow they, were accused of not following everything perfectly, that they would lose all federal funding for their schools.
Mr. McGovern, there is not a single requirement in this bill dealing with banning of books. So I don't know what you're talking about in terms of the list of onerous requirements on banning books. There's not a single word in here about banning books.
Yeah. Well,
well,
first of all,
idea what you're talking about.
Well, two things. First of all, I mean, just in answer my question, yes or no, do you think this book should be banned? And the answer is?
Well, obviously, I don't think the book should be banned. But again, you're taking out of context. I have no idea. You said it's been banned.
It has been banned, and I gave you the in Duval County Public School and district in Florida.
Well, I don't know what that means. So.
Well, that's a district in Florida.
I need more information on what you mean by banning a book.
Have you been following any of the debate on books that are being removed from schools? I mean, there's a book entitled "I Am Martin Luther King" that was banned from some schools. I mean, you're the Education Committee. I mean, are you guys following any of that?
Mr. McGovern, I follow as much information about what's happening in terms of education as I possibly can, but I have not seen anything on that. But your definition of ban is something I don't understand. I don't know what the definition is.
Ranking Member Scott, do you share my concern that this bill might result in the banning of more books?
Yes, and although technically it does not ban any books, it sets up a matrix where the school board has to name every book in its library, making it easy to sort, select, and find. If a national organization has selected that book, they can instantaneously find throughout the country every other library that has that and launch a campaign to censor that book. And each and every little school board would be faced with either you got to ban the book or you're going to face a lawsuit.
Right. So basically,
and you've got limited money and limited time to deal with stuff, and so they can launch a national campaign and be banning books all over the country. And this bill will create the logistics to make that easy.
And essentially, I mean, if a school doesn't jump through hoops and comply with all this red tape, they could lose their federal funding. Is that the result of this bill?
It's a requirement in the bill that they have a record, and if they buy a new book, they've got to update the website to show that they've got the book, and you can launch a instantaneously launch a national campaign finding every library, school library in the country that has that book, and send a notice to sue if it's not banned, and that's what this bill will make easy.
Yeah, and essentially, the concern that many of us have here is that this would have a chilling effect on the freedom of kids all across the country to read all kinds of books, and that, you know, school districts might not want to end up in dealing with any kind of controversy because of a small number of people that might raise objections, and so they just might move to ban the book.
How many school boards want to defend a lawsuit on banning a book? I mean, if you have a national organization coming in banning books, they file a lawsuit, and all of a sudden, the school board is faced with either you defend the lawsuit or you ban the book.
I'd like to ask unanimous consent to insert in the record a letter from the American Library Association opposed to this, they raised the issue that they fear that this bill would create a catalyst for more book banning and censorship. And I'd like to ask unanimous consent to put that in the record.
Without objection.
And again, I looked at the committees, the amendments that were offered in committee, and some of them seemed to be like totally non-controversial, yet they were all rejected. You know, I mean, people voted no on preventing schools from banning books, no on parent-teacher coordinators, no on getting rid of lead pipes. They seem to be more concerned about getting Rosa Parks out of our schools than getting lead pipes out of our schools. So I get it. People don't want to talk about how this bill would promote banning books or hurt students, but you know, but it does. So I also just want to say, for the record, Mr. Chairman, that the polling on these issues is not in favor of what Dr. Fox is presenting here today. Hart Research did a poll, and it says fully 65% of the voters and 74% of parents say that teachers in their schools generally stick to teaching appropriate academic content and skills education, while just 27% of voters and 21% of parents believe teachers often go too far in promoting, quote, a woke political agenda in the classroom. 2/3, 66% of voters say that culture war battles distract public schools from their core mission of educating students. An overwhelming 85% to 15% margin, voters want the new Congress to focus on providing support and resources to public schools, not carrying out political investigations. I ask unanimous consent to put that in the record.
Without objection.
Yeah. The bottom line, and I'll close with this, I never in a million years, when I first got elected to Congress, thought that we would be having a conversation like the one we are having now. It really is disturbing. And, you know, and I feel very strongly that people who care about freedom, that people who are against censorship, the people who think that banning books is a horrific thing to do. We even have a legislator in Tennessee who's talking about burning books. I just think this is not what we should be focused on right now. We should be focused on getting our schools the resources they need so that our kids can get the best education possible. I think that's what most parents want, not us going down this road. But in any event, I thank you both. And did you want to say something, Dr. Fox?
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman,
Sure, absolutely.
if I might, since Mr. McGovern is inserting into the record his poll numbers, I'd like to insert into the record our poll numbers. according to survey results, and we have the footnotes on these so we can give you the source. 72% of Americans support curriculum transparency. 67% believe that parents should be able to opt their children out of curriculum they believe is inappropriate or harmful. Nearly 8 in 10 parents polled nationally want to have influence over what is taught in K-12 classrooms.
Well,
So-
so you brought that up. Let me ask you, Mr. Scott, Congressman Scott. I mean, Elementary and Secondary Education Act already ensures that parents have a bunch of rights. I mean, to be involved in the development of a school support and improvement plan to improve student outcomes, to receive information on how parents can be involved in the education of their children, and to be active participants in assisting their children, to meaningfully participate in the development of a district parent and family engagement policy. I mean, this notion that somehow parents can't do anything or have no ability to have any input on what is going on in schools. I mean, that seems to be contrary to what already exists.
Well, first of all, the parents help elect the school board.
Absolutely.
But all of that coordination and collaboration is already happening, and this bill doesn't give them anything that they don't have already. I would agree that 72% like transparency. I'm surprised it's not 100%. Everybody, but this bill doesn't give them anything they don't have already. I mean, the right to address the school board, with the language of the bill, says it's without limitation. They rejected an amendment with reasonable limitations, which means that if 100 people show up at a school board meeting, does each and every one have a federal cause of action if they don't get to speak for as long as they want?
And what is the answer to that?
I didn't write the bill.
I don't. Do you know what the answer to that, Dr. Fox, is?
Well, I do believe that it says it was a reasonable right. I was trying to find that amendment
Yeah.
itself.
No, that's
I could not find it.
the chair recognizes the language because that was the amendment that they rejected with reasonable limitations.
Okay. Well, yeah, and again, what this bill does is it holds the threat of losing all federal support for schools in a particular district. I thank you both. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. And, I think there was one prominent